Hi, welcome everyone to our next session, and I welcome all the audience to the 17th World Education Summit, School Education, with the panel discussion Bridging the Digital and Economic Divide in Education, National Education Policy 2020 Perspective. So we have esteemed panelists and school stakeholders and school leaders from the Pan India. So I would like to introduce Mr. Venkatesh Sarvasiddhi, Senior Head Digital Skill Innovation Industry Partnership and CSR, National Skill Development Corporation. Welcome, Venkatesh, sir. Welcome to the 17th World Education Summit, and he will moderate this session. I welcome Dr. Skand, Principal, the Hyderabad Public School, Begumpet, and welcome Dr. Skand. Welcome to the 17th World Education Summit. Thank you for giving your precious time. So I welcome Sunita Nagpal, Principal, KR Mangalam World School, Gurgaon. Welcome, Sunita ma'am. Welcome to the 17th World Education Summit, School Education. So we have Ms. Shashi Banerjee, Principal, Shiv Nadar School from Noida. Welcome, Shashi ma'am. Welcome to the 17th World Education Summit. And we have Dr. Monalisa, Chairperson, KIIT International School, Bhubaneshwar. Welcome, Dr. Monalisa.
Thank
So,
you.
And we have Geetika, Bahuguna, COO, Millennium Group of Schools from Noida. Welcome, Geetika ma'am. Welcome to the 17th World Education Summit. So I hand over this session to Mr. Venkatesh. He will moderate this session, and I request all the audience, if you have any question, please drop your questions. We will take this question live as well, and you can take it offline after this session. Over to you, Venkatesh sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek, and thanks everyone. The panelists who joined from different parts of India, leading various educational institutions of repute in the school system, as well as the audience who have joined us this afternoon to be part and witness this event. I welcome you all. Setting the context on the current today's topic for which we are invited, bridging the digital and the economic divide in education. This is it's a very interesting topic. In the current context, there are two things that are happening. One is the National Educational Policy, which was released, which has very interesting insights. If you look into the draft of it, the kind of an execution they're looking into, the changes they have made to build a very robust and pedagogy which suits the current requirements, the millennial and the Gen Z population, which is actively looking at taking new strides in the industry, addressing the gaps. And second is also this is happening in a time shift, and I would request all the panelists to be on mute. That would really help. So, and also the second aspect is the fact that we are going through a huge pandemic, and a lot of things have changed, especially Indian education ecosystem. We were not thinking that the pandemic would suddenly hit neither we nor anybody in the world. So suddenly a pandemic of this large, large pandemic when hits us, the entire education system goes through a very huge change. In schools like international schools and private schools, of course, they use a lot of technology. For schools which are in state government and central government driven, and certain schools in the bottom of the pyramid where infrastructures are still a huge challenge, they have seen a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges. But of course, they also looked at finding solutions to continue the motion. So India is a very large ecosystem, as you all are aware of. We have 1.75 million schools. That number is much bigger than any country in the world. So the kind of number we are talking about. So in an ecosystem like this, when you expect schools to be at the same level, it's very, very impossible, because I would put them into different clusters in terms of availability of resources, teachers, infrastructure, access to a lot of interesting content, curriculum, pedagogies. That there are different layers. We will touch upon some of the challenges, some of the interesting insights from each of you, and also discuss to the possible extent, with the limitation of the time, also keeping in that what are the new things you have seen under the national education policy, which has been thought through by the leaders, by the policy makers, to see how can we fix some of the problems, whether it's the inclusion of interesting things like the coding, or in introducing vocational education, or the pedagogy model, or the assessments. And if you look into the aim of this is to improve the gross enrollment ratio, and there are a lot of things that come into play. So without not taking much of time, I would love to actually, the way I would look into is I'll go to each of the panelists, because each of you bring in a lot of experience of running schools, managing schools, and also you can share with us your thoughts, your inputs, the challenges and opportunities, as we go forward. I'm looking at the next 2 to 5 years to 10 years kind of time frame, and also your views, your first-hand views on the national education policy. You can pick up certain points, you can discuss, maybe you can pose your opinions and views absolutely free. I would start with this forum with Dr. Skand Bali. He's the principal for the Hyderabad Public School, joining us from Telangana today. So we welcome you, Dr. Bali, and we would love to start with you, understanding your views about the topic and also your views on the national education policy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me the opportunity to start the session. First of all, it's an honor to be in the gathering of these esteemed fellow panelists. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Yes, you are absolutely correct when you say that there has been a digital divide which has come in the forefront after this pandemic has hit us. But the silver lining on the positive part of it is that people have started looking at that divide now. They have started talking about it, and they have tried to at least bridge that gap, be it in the government schools or in the private schools. I think for the first time in the history, the entire world has come to the same levels. No matter how economically well-to-do school you are, or whether you are a government school, or whether you are a school in a village or in a metropolitan like Mumbai or Hyderabad, everyone was at the same platform. Everyone was doing the learning through online platform. So that is a good thing. I would like to see the positive of it. Yes, there are challenges in our country, but I think our country has come up strong. I'm not aware of other parts of the country, but in Telangana, definitely I can say the government of Telangana has made huge attempts and inroads to make sure that the education is delivered to the children in the government schools as well. And I have no reason to doubt that the same has not been done in other parts of the country also. There are many schools, the schools who were economically well-to-do schools have also extended their helping hand to the sister schools they were associated with, who were not so economically well-to-do schools. So that is one part of the technology. The second is the national education policy. I believe that it's a landmark document which has come out. I'm in full support of this education policy. One of the reasons is that for the first time, any policy talks about early years education in a formal way. Before this, the education policies did not consider early years education that important. Second important thing is that the mother tongue and the regional language has also given its due importance. Now, that's a debatable part. Many people have been criticizing this policy just because of the regional language or the mother tongue. But to be honest, the research shows that a child learns best, interprets the ideas or the concepts better in the mother tongue. For example, Japan, for example, has given the most number of Nobel laureates. They all learn in the language they are born with. English comes very late in their curriculum. France, Russia, China, North America, England, Latin America, most of the people around the world study in the language they are born with. When we talk about America, Canada, England, English is their mother tongue. Whereas in Russia, France, Germany, Japan, Korea, and these are the countries which are literally doing great in research. We used to learn in the mother tongue or the language we were born with before British came to India. And that was an excellent era of research, innovation. We have done the most of research and innovation, whether it comes on astrology, astronomy, medical science, etc., way back, much before the Western world did it. So I don't see any reason as to why this cannot be incorporated. But yes, the national education policy does not talk only about its language. They say that the teacher who will be teaching should be familiar with both the languages, which is English as well as the mother tongue. So if a child gets stuck in understanding the concept, then he or she should be able to interpret that in the mother tongue. because we still have in India a lot of population which comes from the first generation learner background. So, one, I'm for technology. I'm very happy and positive about it. I'm glad that COVID has shaken us, not in terms of the ones who have lost their loved ones, but in terms of education sector. I'm very happy. I think that shaking was needed. It has woken up to some extent, and I hope that we remain awake and we don't go back from here. Technology is here to stay. I think we absorb it, adopt it, and I'm sure in future it'll look much more brighter. The government should look into the connectivity across the country. And on the second part of NEP, as I said earlier, I'm extremely happy with the current document, which has come in the form of National Education Policy. So these are my opening remarks, and I'm looking forward listening to my fellow panelists and then maybe a few interactions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really nice in the way you touched upon the aspects of COVID hitting us, and also the digital divide slowly getting flattened, because everybody is now moving to a virtual ecosystem, whether it's a government or a semi-government or a private school. That's one point which I can certainly gather from your discussion. The second is also the role of state governments in supporting the execution of the campaigns or execution of the programs, whether it's a national education policy for that matter. And yes, we can see, especially your state government, in Telangana is doing a fabulous job, both in K-12 and higher education. There are a lot of policies, there are interventions linking up to not only just policy level execution in schools and colleges, but also driving employability. There's a lot of positive development there, and we hope other states also catch up to that speed. And you also touched upon some of the interesting aspects around national education policy, especially the example what you took from Japan is a very interesting example. So giving importance to the our local, regional, as well as languages and dialects is very, very important, which has actually been there. Of course, there are people who have a different view. We appreciate, so because it's part of a debate and a forum where we capture both the challenges and limitations, and we try to improve how we go forward. So I would love to see various thoughts and inputs. Now we will move to the the second speaker as part of this interaction. So maybe we will go to Dr. Monalisa from KIIT and hear her inputs.
We can. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Venkatesh, Sarvasiddhi, Dr. Skand Balaji, nice meeting you after a long time. Sunita, Nagpal ji, Geetika, Bahuguna ji, and Shashi Banerjee ji. I'm really honored to be part of such a discerning panel, and the topic is really great and evolved, needs a lot of discussion. If you ask me, what do I understand by digital divide? I am in Bhubaneshwar in Odisha. It is considered to be an economically backward state, but we are well connected here. And I believe the gap between regions having or not having access to modern technology widens due to social factors, economic factors, and technological factors. And and this pandemic has led the way to an unprecedented dependency on digital platforms, specifically in education. This has further progressed towards building a huge gap between the learning outcomes of the public and the private schools, if you all can see it, which has again widened the educational divide for the economically vulnerable in the country. So a survey which was done by AACR report that the access to smartphones has almost doubled since in 2018. The survey against 36.5% households having smartphones then now have 62% households have access. And the encouraging factor is, according to the report, 11% purchased to support children's education. While being compared between a quarter of students in private schools with 44% of students in government schools who didn't have access to smartphones, means half the government school students lag behind their peers in terms of just access to online education. Well, with this virus breaking out, I'm sure that all the private school transited to digital mode immediately. And with half the academic year being passed now, the disparity in learning outcomes between the government and the private school is already quite distinct. According to the ASI report, again, the government schools have witnessed a vast leap in the school enrollment this year, like 66.4% boys, 73% girls, compared to 62.8% and 70% in 2018. So this the gap is quite wide when it comes to access to digital platform between the government schools and the private schools. But the good news is that the NEP has a new section on digital education to ensure equitable use of technology. The ministry has promised a dedicated unit to coordinate digital infrastructure, content, capacity building, which will be created within the education ministry to look after the online needs, with this pandemic giving us a heads up. And the teachers will also be, which is the most important factor, is teachers need to be trained properly, because we have personally seen when the outbreak happened, our teachers were paranoid. They didn't know how to do, what to do, and how to go about the things. We had to train all of them immediately so that we don't lose out on learning outcomes. Anyway, and the best part about NEP, I would say, yes, as Dr. Skand said, the immense significance inclined to the early years, the ECC, which is a colossal elevation from all other policies till date. I think we had this policy after 36 years, and the first time this policy has highlighted the seriousness of early childhood development and nurture, which no other policy has given so much importance, though it is not yet a fundamental right, which I seriously feel should be a fundamental right from age 3 to 6 years. So instead of 6 to 14, it should be from birth to 14. The policy maintains a clear, distinct precursor to early policies, and it's a holistic and integrated concept, which again aligns itself with health, nutrition, cognition, language, physical, social development, addresses all-round development of a child before primary education, which is so much a requirement now. Thank you so much. And these were my opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Monalisa, for your inputs, and of course, great to hear feedback. That's always important. What things which, in case, in your opinion, in your view, depending on where you are and the kind of experiences you're having in the particular region, it's always important for us at a policy level to take these interventions and see how changes can be made, and we move towards improving the things what we have set as policies. So moving on further, I think now it's time to invite the other speaker, Ms. Sunita Nagpal. She is the principal for KR Mangalam World School, Gurgaon. So we would love to hear her views and also, her thoughts around the panel discussion topic.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It indeed is an honor to be present and a member of such a illustrious panel here. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I, of course, am a small atom in the whole game, but each one of us together can make a difference. We know our country is large, and it has challenges of scale, equity, and diversity. So it was no mean task to write out this policy, the national education policy. It took almost 36 years for the entire thing to be changed. We have changed, generations have come by in between, education scenario changed, everything changed. But thankfully, when the document was finally released, it took into account the latest as in technology. And it included, in fact, between the draft and the final release also, the pandemic happened. So everything went into fifth gear, and we kind of, the policymakers also looked into the possibility of a blended learning in future. So which is what we are now beginning to understand is the future. The document is very, very progressive. My colleagues have dwelt upon it. What I would like to lay stress on is, as I said, the scale, the diversity involved in our country. So providing universal access is the big challenge. So we are just we are amongst the privileged schools, I would say, where our students have access to technology. And so when this pandemic happened, let's take the example of the pandemic. When the pandemic happened and we could switch to the online mode of teaching, within a few days, and the new session was just about to begin. So we all switched over into it and somehow grappled our way. Despite all the facilities that we had, we did settle down into it very, very well. In fact, it's very interesting that the help who comes to my home has her children studying in Bengal. And she, of course, is very well digitally connected with them. But she also says that her children are attending classes online, which was so heartening. But at the same time, we cannot be ostriches about it. The fact remains that there are remote areas, that there are SEDGs who need to be disadvantaged groups who need to be looked into. I am sure that everybody does not have access. Even students who belong to our schools, who moved away during the pandemic to remoter areas, are having problems in terms of network connectivity. So what the National Education Policy writes down is that they are going to concentrate on two initiatives as far as covering the digital divide goes. They're talking about infrastructure being revamped and built up and fortified to the extent that everybody, that we can reach out to the last mile. And the second is, of course, universal participation. We do know that as of 2015, well, if I take that data, 6.2 crore children, school-going children, were out of schools. So we can't be ostriches about it. No magic has happened in 5 years. Of course, the initiative of the RTE, initiative of the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, all have helped, but we haven't arrived yet. So there's a lot to be done. It was wonderful to hear that, yes, schools like ours in public-private partnership are assisting out government schools also, but still it is a fact that in government schools, children do not have complete 100% access to digital devices, to internets, wherever there are internets. I am in Gurgaon. Let's take the example of Gurgaon itself. We have a lot of power cuts here. So students like ours are also denied classes at times, not because they don't want to be there, but because there are challenges. They have power cuts, they get logged out, then to log them back in, because of cyber securities, we have placed in certain security measures, and the children can't access the teams. So, these are all kinds of very, they're the nitty-gritties, they're the logistical things that need to be addressed. And I'm so glad that in the larger picture, the National Education Policy has gotten down into all these little details also. If you really read it, they are looking into a dedicated unit in the ministry looking into building the infrastructure in such a manner that everybody will have access. So I think, my fellow panelists will have a lot more to add to this, but I feel that we have embarked upon the journey to bridge the digital divide, whether it is because of socioeconomic strata or it is because of geographic locations or whatever. The challenge has been put out to us. The pandemic has been like a test for all of us, a test for this world of blended learning, which we are headed for. And I'm hoping and sincerely wish that all of us will be able to help out each other and reach out to the last mile. So thank you. That was my opening remark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dr. Ms. Sunita Nagpal. Really appreciate your inputs, especially the 2 points which you made about the national education policy, one on the infrastructure and leveling that field and extending the last mile delivery. And second is the universal participation. So very, very important and significant points. One of the things is also I'm realizing when I'm talking to various startups, especially in India, the startups have done a great job in the last 7, 8 months, 8, 9 months in quickly gearing up to the needs of the individuals and see where all they can support, especially in a situation where technology plays a major role. In fact, we at NSDC National Skill Development Corporation, under the aegis of Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, where in fact today we announced a very interesting partnership with Baiju, wherein Baiju is working with us in taking teacher training programs to various government schools in small towns and villages. So the objective there is to enable teachers with technology. Because, as you said, pandemic has suddenly hit us. The readiness for teachers to use technology is again a limitation in a lot of these small towns and villages. So Baiju, as you know, in the K-12 space, it's already a more than a unicorn. It's a 12 billion valuation company, which is gearing up to become one of the world's largest edtech companies now. So they partnered with us, and we are doing some free teacher training programs in government schools to enable them with technology. So further moving on the same interesting topic and continuing the forum and the discussion, let's move to Ms. Geetika Bahuguna. She is the Chief Operating Officer of the Millennium Group of Schools, Noida. So we welcome you and would love to hear from you. You need to unmute yourself. I think you're on mute. Yes.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for the introduction. I would like to thank Dr. Ravi also for this invite. It's indeed a pleasure and privilege to be part of this panel and deliberation. Well, NEP 2020 in its recommendation has laid a very, very strong focus on leveraging technology for access, equity, and quality in education. In fact, when we were given this topic, it was really heartening because immediately when the NEP was released, we were wondering if this policy was unveiled in normal times, then what would have happened? And we realized that there would have been three critical challenges. One would have been the challenge of mindset and acceptance of technology as an integral part of teaching learning in urban and rural areas and marginalized and non-marginalized sectors. Then second would have been challenge of unlearning existing habits and adopting new ones by the educationists. And the third one would have been challenge of adequate resources at multiple levels. So, but coincidentally, due to this pandemic, the education sector has already experienced this fastest transition and growth in embracing technology and has seen a rapid movement. I think everybody has shared that we are representing the privileged sector and the private schools, but also in the government sector, because when we've seen the studies, everybody is moving at a very fast pace to address all the three challenges, but maybe with varying success at all levels. So the first challenge I would like to just elaborate on the mindset and acceptance. So, and we've always seen that these schools, rural, urban, public or private, have been, have been shared with technology tools way back, even after NCF 2005. And this technology revolution has been on, but then it really did not pick up. In fact, I've been in the education sector for the last 20 years, where we've been trying to support schools in, integrating technology. But it is due to this pandemic, or probably this came as a, one of those, it was like a, one of the opportunities where everybody jumped into it. And so for once, this pandemic has ensured that the everlasting debate in education sector regarding technology to be or not to be an integral part of education, this is over. And now we are convinced and we have overcome the challenges of acceptance and mindset, which had been the biggest challenge. I've worked in the government sector also, and we've seen that schools had adequate technology, they had adequate access, but it was not being used. Now, the second challenge was of unlearning old habits. And we've seen that, for 20 years in both public and private sectors, there has been, their mindset has been the biggest roadblock. But now with the steepest curve, which has, at learning, we've seen at scale, this has created a new record in teacher training and its impact on children. it's amazing to see that despite the immense work and fatigue, our teachers across all our schools are not only engaged in learning skills, because technology was there, but then were they skilled or not skilled? That has been the biggest roadblock. And we've seen that they have conducted, in fact, we had conducted a survey across all our 25 schools, and we realized that, and we wanted to know whether teachers, what was the impact on teachers during this? Because there were news reports, and there were, the schools were reporting that actually technology has taken a toll on their emotional well-being. And when we conducted the survey, it was amazing to see that most of the teachers, despite the effort, were highly motivated. They were very high on motivation, and they even shared that the reason behind this was that they were getting to learn new skills. So I think that's the biggest, benefit of, everybody jumping into this technology revolution has happened, where teachers have overcome the mindset, they have learned new skills, and they are ready to take on technology even going forth, which I think NEP has very, they have a very robust plan and recommendation. And if all of it gets implemented, and I'm sure with having the whole world, and in fact the whole country having experienced this transition already, it would not be, it would not take, long for them to implement it in the right way. But then when we talk about the rural sector, I think that's where the issue of access and issue of skill set comes in. Because I was just reading these two studies the other day. One was by Save the Children, which was was conducted in 11 states and 2 union territories in the month of June during lockdown. And it said that, and the target group was 11 to 17 years of children, and there were about 1,000 children and 1,500 parents, and all belonged to the marginalized and migrant population. It threw up some very hard-hitting facts that while 2 out of 3 children did get some learning resources, but most of them were not able to access the quality in education. The parents felt that the children were learning, but they were actually learning very little. And 80% of the children had limited access, and they were not using network for learning because they did not have the network. So, and there were about 50% children who had no contact with the teachers. Again, it was, lack of resources and lack of internet connectivity. And in fact, there were 10% children who actually shared that, and the parents shared that they would not be getting back to school. So while the privilege and the higher economic sector has taken a leap, and we are all geared to move to the next level and continue, our use of integration of technology, but our marginalized sectors have a huge challenge still. Despite the governments have been doing, and I think I've seen some of the governments where they have used all the provisions which have been made in NEP. So there was like building a digital repository of courseware. Then e-learning resources and platforms like Diksha, Swayam for teachers. And they also proposed a national teacher platform, which would probably address the issue of teacher training. Because when we are sitting in a, in a very, we would consider ourselves to be a privileged lot, that way we have the access, we had the resources, we were able to move very fast. But there are so many children and so many states where still the problem is huge. And we've just touched the tip of the iceberg as of now. Well, we have a great journey ahead to systematize the new change. And I strongly feel that all the stakeholders, like practitioners, school owners, public and private, and policymakers, have to be on the same page, and they have to collaborate to align with the common vision and to tap it on and to tap all the resources and funds. I think funding would be a huge requirement because, the data shows that children are on, only 40% children are on, have the smartphones. Even in schools like, privileged schools, which are in the rural sector, children don't have their own laptops. They are on a shared resource, and most of them are they are using a smartphone. Well, so quality of education, how we need to actually ensure that children learn and we are able to, address the quality benchmark. That needs a lot of deliberation at, I think there has to be, and this is like, currently our, this entire experience is like a case study. And it's a big case study where you can one can take learnings and also plow into the solutions which we need to propose. So NEP is a very robust document. It has, but then how it will get implemented, how it will get funded, how people are going to and the stakeholders are going to collaborate together remains to be seen. But I think I'm positive that it is possible. We have overcome the mindset. We have we know how to train teachers. We know that it works, and it will, if used properly, will be able to, address the issue of access and, universal access, and also bridging the digital divide. Thank you, Venkatesh.
Thank you. That was so interesting, actually, to hear your inputs in terms of some of the points which you made are very, very effective. And those are, I really like them. For example, the challenges when you mentioned about the mindset and acceptance, overcoming that is not that easy. It's a huge challenge. And that too in a country like India, which is very diverse, which is very large, and the ecosystem, which is like 1.75 million schools, it's not an easy thing. The second thing is schools having technology and not using. Prior to joining NSDC and the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, I was heading the education for Microsoft India for Southeast Asia. So in that effort, when I used to engage with international schools and the private schools, which actually buy in a lot of technology, the usage of the technology, there were licenses available, and the usage of those technology or those licenses was very limited, even at the teacher's end, even at the school end, or even at the what you call the students' end. So for example, it would be interesting to note that the PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, if you have in the MS Office, the most of the colleges, I'm talking about even engineering colleges, higher education colleges, only use 8 to 12% of the PowerPoint features. I'm talking about this. And I'm not talking about a school, I'm talking about good academic institutions of repute, even in higher education universities. That means the power of technology, one has to leverage the power of technology, especially when pandemic has hit, there was no choice for individuals. So everybody has to come onto online platforms, online tools, LMSs, learning management systems, either for teachers to deliver classes, monitor, examine, assess, certify, so the use of technology has come into play. And that was one of the interesting points you touched upon. I really like diverse kind of inputs coming in from various eminent personalities and who are there on the panel today. So the third is on access and skill set. The challenge on access and skill set. How would we drive accessibility in terms of infrastructure, technology use, and standardizations which are required? These are some of the very interesting points you touched upon. Quite an interesting thought process you have put on to this panel here for us to take forward the discussion. Moving on further, let's welcome Ms. Shashi Banerjee, Principal Shiv School, Noida, to share her valuable inputs.
Thank you, Venkatesh.
Yes,
and am I
you're
audible to everyone there? Thank you. And deep gratitude for all the wonderful first sharings by all the panelists. It just makes it so much more easier to quintessentially put it all together as being the last one to share my thoughts. But what a 8 months it has been. And of all the people, I'm reminded of Lenin's quote, and who would think he would say a thing like this? There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. So for the education sector, I think this is what we're all talking about. And it is purely a need that arose out of an no option environment. And I think that's where I would like to talk a little more on. We are, as human beings, I would like to believe, not so much as thinking beings, but feeling beings who also think. So while we were balancing this entire paradigm of no option to meet each other, but to go to what was already available to most of us. I mean, look at the whole of India. Mobile telephony was something that was an idea that emerged. There's a huge, lovely book that was brought out, The Idea India, by the Public Broadcasting Division of India. And it spoke about mobile telephony. And I remember in the year 2000 and I think it was 5 or 6, where the EduSat, which was such a big thing that happened in the education department, Professor Marmar Mukhopadhyay, who was leading the NUPA, was trying to connect people, beaming lessons through, the best lessons across the world. But yeah, it did fall upon deaf ears, because was there a real need? And you would see us how we are. Only when you're pushed at the brink do you really, they say when you put somebody beneath the waters and you can't breathe for the second time is when you actually do what you want to do. So that is what happened to all of us. And what a great leveler, whether you are in the village, whether you're in Italy, whether you are in Swiss, anywhere, educators from all over the world have come in. And I remember attending the first global international webinar in the month of March. And since then, we have become a whole, a kind of a cohort of educators across the world, and thanks to technology. But are we consumers only? And that is where my question is, when you say everything was available and we did not start using it, because we were using what we wanted to consume. You eat and you drink and you don't produce food. That is why you get to the place, the brink that we all have got to. Today, students are talking about, growing your own green food, because they have understood that unless, and I think the pandemic, one of the insights is, unless you contribute to making the world a better place, you don't have a place there. And I never wish to forget what Greta Thunberg brought into our education world. And many people might feel that was a hype, but that little girl who stormed the UN well, and she said, the school is dead. That was a huge message. And it's dead not because it's dead for something negative, because it was to be born again. So I really look at this whole paradigm as being born again for an educator. And there's a wonderful Sufi couplet. Sorry, I'm notoriously known for this, and which comes to my mind from Rumi. And I think it's very important for us as educators to remember that the 3.5-year-old and the 18-year-old and the 15-year-old are all in a space where, hats off to them, they haven't lost it as yet, and they are all with us. But Rumi said, out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I think we are all right now meeting our learners, our teachers, ourselves in that field. And it is important to acknowledge that. So while 43%, and there is data, people have mobile smartphones. Look at our neighborhood, Delhi. I mean, I'm in Noida, so I say Delhi as a neighborhood. They really got on to that act and got the less privileged, or whoever you want to call them, as those who are disadvantaged, to get on to apps where there was continuity of learning. So our key goal for everyone was, can we continue learning? And for that, we had to start with, where is the learner? So since you had given this wonderful opportunity and you invited us to share a little of how we are doing it in our own spaces, I think resources is not what leads you to something beautiful. You can have, a 4 feet of whatever you want. You can have a You can have a lot of that. But I think it is when you reach your learner, and we are, as most of you, all the other schools, we have at least 20%, if not 25% of those coming from the so-called disadvantaged groups, where they neither have the internet connection nor the device. And that was the divide which quickly got taken care of if you were a sensitive body and you were trying to reach out to your teacher. Even teachers had to rush during the lockdown to their remote villages to look after their parents, to look after places, and from there the online classes started. So I think the first thing that we did as a school was to have compassionate, courageous, and candid conversations with all stakeholders, including those in the neighborhood villages. You call them the economically weaker section. You call them the people who have partnership, because the policy. And since you've all spoken about the policy, it lessens my kind of role to do that. But the policy presents a significant opportunity for cooperation between the various industry stakeholders and regulatory authorities, the educational institutions. So the Internet and the Mobile Association of India recommend huge partnerships, and that is where the opportunity lies between the edtech industry, the NETF, enabling research and adaptation of the industry-led best practices. So the success of this policy will be contingent on the means and mode of its implementation. I loved the NCF. We've all lived it. Today we may say whatever we may. The comprehensive continuous evaluation was a great idea. And it came from the 1963 Kothari Commission. So and it took so much time, 20 years. But are the stakeholders here now in a better space? I would say yes. As a mindset, we are like an onion. You keep peeling, it's only the onion that comes out. And right till the core, you will have the onion. So I think the NEP has come out of that onion because there was a core there. And if you look at the entire history of education in our country, there has never been any doubt on the intent. I think the doubt, or rather we would like to self-assess ourselves, is always on those who interpret, those who kind of formulate the implementation policies, put together the resources, and the delivery that happens, the last mile that one of my colleagues spoke about. So I always think about that one challenge of the young child. We just had the literature Nobel go to Louise Gluck, and she said something beautiful. She said, "We see the world only once in childhood. Rest is all memory." So for all of us educators, there is, of course, this great question of how is the youngest learner dealing with the world? What is the perception that is being formed? And what does this signify or convey for posterity? There are virtual internships happening for the high school students. There are career pathways being made through CIALFO, prompt, college essays. There are some significant pathways being created by VUCA warriors, I call them, no more just the volatile, uncertain, complex, and the ambiguous realities of the new world, but those who understand vision, understanding, collaboration, and adaptability. So there is a counterfeit there. And I think the biggest positive, despite, as you rightly said, Venkatesh, we're not talking about those who've lost we've all had our own fair share or unfair share of certain tragedies in our lives through this pandemic. But what I can see is heutagogy emerging as the winner, self-directed learning. Today, you need labs that are coming out of kitchen, out of gardens, out of neighborhood solutions. The child is into a self-directed pathway. And I think that is where the feat here of the NEP is that it is at least thinking about dematerialization and digitization and experientialization of content, if not completely moving from content-based education to process and idea and concept. So I would grant the policymakers, they've done a good job, and it's now for the implementers. But at the end of it, if I may, if I have another few seconds to go, I would like to add that uh, it has given teachers an opportunity. You know, you had the freedom struggle. It gave people an opportunity to really create history because you had such an event in history. Similarly, now we have an opportunity as educators to really galvanize, to change the wheels we operate on. Don't slink back to the old ways of learning or teaching. In fact, it's just about learning. So I don't think the routines of the erstwhile world will anymore find any utility in a world which is now about partnerships, power sharing, and student agency. I think this is foremost because our country has been very information centric. We have a rich repository of ancient history, indigenous knowledge. Time to unlock those and not be vilifying things that have come out of things that we've not found reason for. This is also time, I must share this quick thing. We went into a complete one on one technology program some 2 years ago. And I must say, there were non believers, fence sitters, because screen time, oh my God, for 12-year-olds, screen time is going to damage them. Today, I'm shocked the same people want more screen time for the youngest ones, whom we didn't even think of. So, you know, necessity can really change viewpoints, change standpoints. And today, I feel we were better equipped because we could have some robust data management systems already in place, because some part of it is heuristic, not just heutagogy. Heutagogy is self-directed, but heuristic intelligence for school leaders is important when you can somewhere envision the bend ahead in the road. So I can see the few years, if you remember the air impurity scenario where children had to learn from home, that's when I think the eyes of most people opened and you realized you had to create a parallel pathway. I think we have, as I said, at least 25% people who need devices, who need training. Parents need the wherewithal. Students, they've done fairly well because there was a focus. And the best and the most affluent of parents have lost their business today. They won't know how they're going to pay their fee. I don't know, it must be happening in all your schools. So I think more empathy has got generated and people are looking at newer ways of raising funds, helping each other. So if you look at all the 4 areas that I mentioned are very clearly mentioned through 4 areas of collaboration within the given NEP that we are talking about. I would say it was great that in July they thought of it and brought it out. But the butterfly is only a butterfly. I don't know whether it will fly or not. It is in our hands. If we let it go and don't soil its wings, it's really going to fly off. Thank you. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Ms. Shashi Banerjee. I think your articulation and the positivity and the way you have explained some of the quotations by even the Sufi saints like Rumi, who is one of my favorite. It's very, very nice and encouraging. And one of the things you said out of, to sum up in the interest of time, is the synergy that you established between industry, the global edtech and the Indian edtech firms in driving content integration, accessibility to technology is concerned, and then the policymakers and of course the end student ecosystem, which will comprise of students, teachers, and the stakeholders. I think that synergy, bringing that synergy is very, very important in driving any impactful thing. Policies are policies at the end of the day. How do you execute it all depends on bringing that synergy. In fact, at NSDC in the last 9 months or 8 months of our pandemic, we have in fact leveraged close to 20 plus partnerships with firms like an edX or in Coursera or in Udacity or even a Khan Academy in developing. Actually, Khan Academy, we partnered with them in developing an interesting course on foundational mathematics, which is extremely important, not only for students, even for skilling ecosystem. So, bringing in that synergy makes a lot of difference. Now, in interest of time, I think we are almost at 4:44. But quickly, I want to take and run you through one simple thought. If you are in the policy side of things, and of course you are in the policy side of things, because at the end of the day, you're integral part of execution of that. So one thing you really want to emphasize on from the national education policy, which you feel is the most interesting thing, from a positive perspective, I want to quickly run through and pick all your brains. And to start with, let's go in the reverse order. We'll start with, I'll give you maybe 30 seconds so that we can complete, or maybe a minute, to touch upon one interesting aspect. And how do you look at positively contributing to that aspect, national education policy? To start with, let's start with Ms. Shashi from Shiv, Nadar, and then we'll move up to the other panelists.
Sorry. So I would like to take up. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yes.
So I would like to say that the experiential learning and the project-based learning and multidisciplinary learning avenues in the middle school, secondary school, which is where it was needed the most. So to bring its social impact through real technology, science, and the coming together of application of all the learning to build an app, to build a solution, so that you can actually do a real world prototype. That is where I would look at translating the vision of the NEP into real learning for students. Thank you.
So lovely. Dr. Monalisa from the KIIT International School, your thoughts, if you have to pick one particular piece and your emphasis on it.
So I would rather take the early childhood education and care as a primary segment, which the policy should take it up and make it a fundamental right, at least, because we need to take that segment very, 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 very crucial. That's a crucial part, because the whole foundation of a building is laid on a foundation structure, foundational structure. It has to be strong. We cannot talk about secondary, middle, and primary without talking about the
absolutely
little ones, the
strengthening the
kindergartners.
foundation and the structuring, that is extremely important. I think you touched upon a very interesting thing. Moving on to Ms. Geetika Bahuguna from the Millennium School, Gurgaon, Noida. You are on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
I would like to touch upon national teacher platforms, where NTP that caters to teachers from all stages of school education, including pre-primary, primary, upper primary, secondary, and senior secondary. Because I feel they are the ones who could enable, they are the most critical piece in this whole
very true.
drive.
Absolutely. And I think that's a critical portion also. That's a very interesting point. So moving on to...
Besides early childhood education, which is also, I think I would go with, that is also a very critical piece.
So your thoughts, Ms. Sunita Nagpal from Principal KR Mangalam World School, Gurgaon?
Yeah, Venkatesh, I think the most important things have been talked about: early childhood, teacher, and I feel that, as we have been going through this phase of online teaching, one of the big challenges that we faced is assessments. And the National Education Policy does talk about pilot projects, initiating pilot projects for formulating assessment policies and all, and how we go about assessments in the online mode. So that is something that I would really like to be engaged in, and to I actually wait for the results of any such projects that happen.
Excellent. I think assessment is something very interesting, and at the same time quite challenging, Ms. Sunita Nagpal. The problem is, in an online mode, assessments become really, really difficult. how do you use technology, in online assessments, online counseling. These are some of the challenges we are also working on to figure out some solutions using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and also tamper-proof certifications and assessments using blockchain as a technology. So these are some interesting parts. We are working with large majors like Microsoft and Google's and Amazon's of the world to figuring out solutions which can really help us scale. So moving on from here, Dr. Skand, your thoughts, final thoughts on the NEP and one aspect which you really want to focus on.
I think professional development of the faculty, which is very, very critical.
Yeah.
Something which has been neglected over years. I think NEP has mentioned that well. So I would like to focus more on the professional development of the teachers.
Absolutely. I think that's very critical. In fact, when I speak to the large edtech companies, whether the Byju's or Vedantus or the even the toppers and others of the world, so most of them are right now focusing on educating teachers and bringing some of the teachers at par with the others, because there's a digital divide there also. Teachers who use technology extensively and teachers who don't use technology. Bridging that gap is extremely important. And the people are investing in actually making sure there are free faculty development programs or teacher development programs to enable them, to enhance them, and also help them with enabling with them with technology. Because with the coming time, technology becomes very important aspect as we are seeing today. And knowing teachers and teachers knowing technology and adopting becomes extremely crucial for a successful education. So with this, I think we covered many aspects of the policies, limitations, challenges, your thoughts in terms of how to improvise things, and also impacting for a better implementable and executable project, which is empowering the education process in India. Thank you so much, everyone. Abhishek, I don't know whether we have time for Q&A. Otherwise, if there are questions which we can, maybe all of us can answer, if you can collate them, we can circle back. I leave it to you. But thank you so much, and really appreciate valuable inputs from each of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we have a speaker certificate to all the panelists right now. So I request Rajeshwar to share the speaker. And this is a token of appreciation from our side. Thank you, Venkatesh. And this is a speaker certificate provided to us from the 17th World Education Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Sakand Bali, the principal of the Hyderabad Public School, Begumpet. So, speaker certificate from our side. Thank you, Dr. Sunita Nagpal, ma'am, principal, KR Mangalam World School, Gurgaon. Thank you for giving your precious time for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geetika Bahuguna, ma'am, the CEO, Millennium Group of Schools, Noida. Thank you for coming to World Education Summit and express your ideas. Thank you, Shashi ma'am, the principal, Shiv Nadar School, Noida. Thank you, Shashi ma'am, for giving your innovative ideas. And thank you, Dr. Monalisa, Chairperson, KIIT.
Thank you so much.
Bhubaneshwar. So,
Thank you.
by this, we will wrap this session, and I request all the audience to please drop your questions. We have multiple questions. We will send all your questions to our panelists. If they revert, we will get back to you. And you also follow on their social handles. If you have any query, you directly access to their social handles, and you can drop your queries there also. So thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you, Shashi ma'am.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.